Good morning and welcome to our weekly Bible study. Today we are continuing our Bible study on faith and healing. And today we're actually looking at the word healing and what that means to us today. It may have meant something differently last month, it may mean something differently next year. But right now, what does healing mean to you today? And there's a few questions you need to have in mind as you think about this. First of all, what is the difference between healing and curing? Is there a difference? Do they work hand in hand? Can you have one without the other? Also, when you talk about healing, what are you talking about? Are you talking physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, economically? Healing can have a whole lot of different meanings, especially in today's society, in today's world. We're looking at things in a whole new way and in a whole new light than we ever have before. So we have to take into consideration, what does that mean? And where do you see healing occurring in your life today? Where do you see healing happening outside your own realm, outside your own world? So with that in mind, with those questions is kind of helping to kind of frame the discussion. And I always want to encourage you once again to leave discussions in the comment section. I want us to have an ongoing dialogue concerning these topics. It's easy for me to talk for 10, 15 minutes and kind of hope to get the ball rolling. But the idea is that you will then share your thoughts and response to the video, and so that we can have an ongoing dialogue from that point on. And so, anyway, our passage today comes from the New Revised Standard Version, and it's Luke 4, verses 16 through 21. And this is while Jesus is just beginning his ministry, actually in the Galilee region. And so, when he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. And he unrolled the scroll and found the place where it is written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor," which would have been Sabbath year, or year of Jubilee. He rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of all the synagogue were fixed on him. Then he began to say to them, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." Now, there's a lot of things we need to kind of unroll in this story itself. Jesus goes to the synagogue on Saturday to worship, which was his custom. Just like for many of us, we go on Sunday to worship. Now, we go on Sunday instead of Saturday as a memorial and a reminder of the Easter promise and the Easter gift. We go on Sunday because Jesus was raised from the dead on Sunday. So that's why we're now on Sunday instead of Saturday. There are Seventh-day Adventists, Seventh-day Baptists. There are plenty of people who still worship on Saturday because that was the official day of Sabbath. But most of the Christian world now worships on Sunday because of Easter. That said, Jesus does some interesting things here. He comes to his local church, and he is being watched by everybody there. He has already started doing miracles throughout the region. He is becoming a fairly popular speaker, and they're wanting to see if he's going to do the same thing here in his own hometown as what he has done elsewhere. And so they bring him the book of Isaiah, and he rolls it out to the passage that he's looking for. Now, this is an important thing that really goes contrary to what a lot of modern day archaeologists believe. A lot of archaeologists believe that at this time only the wealthy and the very elite knew how to read. But what we see here is that literacy was actually pretty common. We also have some archaeological information that we have found in England that proves this to be the case as well, as we have found letters written by Roman soldiers around the same era being mailed back to their families, and also letters that they have received. So these were common foot soldiers who, according to the archaeologists originally, shouldn't be able to read. And yet, here they are. They're writing letters back to home, letters to their mom and dad, letters to their sweethearts. So we have an ongoing dialogue here with scholars as well as with ourselves as to what really was going on. But anyway, Jesus reads this passage, uh, and then he does something rather remarkable. He sits down. Now, you sit down back then to teach. And not only does Jesus sit down as a young man, which means that he has not uh, built up his bona fides, so to speak, with the community. So they're really kind of taken aback when he sits down in their presence and sits down with authority and with the idea of teaching. Not only does he do that, but he doesn't start speaking with the authority of others. He's not referencing others. He is actually writing his own original thoughts, or speaking his own original thoughts. He's teaching from a place of an expert or a scholar. Now, even today, when you go to get a PhD or a master's, what you're really doing is you're writing an original paper, but it's a research paper, and you're making an argument that you use other people and other sources to make your argument. You try to use those other sources to try to prove whatever it is that you're trying to say. It's almost never heard of in the academic world, especially for someone to just walk out and say, here's what I believe, and this is why I believe it. You've always got to be backing it up with other people and with other experts. Jesus doesn't do that. Jesus sits down and says, I have come to bring you the light. And so he begins. Now, it is important that we realize that as this story goes on, Jesus is rejected by those very same people. But at this time, he is starting his ministry and he is starting his teaching. Now, let's bring this back into the idea of healing. Well, first of all, if you notice here, he says that the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, and to proclaim the year of Lord's favor, or Jubilee. And so he is saying that he is here to bring healing, healing to the land, healing to society, healing to the person, healing to the soul, healing to the body. And we're dealing with a situation right now in our country and in our world where we are having to think of what does healing mean and how does it work with everything else. Uh, as I speak today, the numbers are pretty grim as far as death tolls in the United States, in the world, in Pennsylvania, and in New York. There are a number of people who are passing away because of the coronavirus. There are equally a number of people who are being financially devastated by this same disease because of the measures that we are taking right now trying to prevent more illness. And so healing for one person may not be healing for another person. And we had to start trying to discern, what does it mean? How many people have to die in order for me to be able to have the economic lifestyle that I want to have? Also, how many people have to be economically destroyed just to make sure nobody gets sick or dies? And these are the things that we're constantly balancing with. How do we deal with the cabin fever that many of us are starting to deal with? The fact that we can't get out, the fact that we can't do what we want to do or go where we want to go. How do we handle these situations? How do we handle the reality that we cannot worship God as we have always worshiped God? How do we handle the fact that we can't hold our grandkids or our children and hug them and love them as we normally would? What does healing mean today in this setting? And what will healing mean to us in the weeks, months, and years to come? Will there be things that have to change? For one, um, Something that many churches do is they have the passing of the peace, which is when you sit there and literally shake hands with all the people around you and you say, may the grace of God be with you. And they say, and also with you. Well, that's an important part of our faith and our belief, where we're bestowing God's blessings on one another and also greeting one another as equals. And now all of a sudden we may not be able to do that, or we'll have to do it in a different way. Maybe just as when Christ came and started trying to heal the broken society and the broken religion of the Jewish people 2,000 years ago, maybe we will have to find new and creative ways to be the church today, to actually meet the needs of the people today. Let me tell you, something I never thought I would do is a Bible study on video. I did not want to become that, because when I do Bible studies, I like to have people around me so that we can have a discussion and so that we can bounce ideas off of one another. And so I can say, well, I never thought of it that way. Or have you thought about this? But the reality is right now we can't do that. We cannot have open Bible study in that format where we actually have people sitting around one table and speaking to one another and touching one another and sharing bread and breaking uh, bonds and creating new bonds. We can't do that. And so we're having to find new ways to bring about that community, to bring about that spiritual growth and healing that is necessary in everyone's life. And so, once again, what does healing mean for us today? Well, healing can come in many different forms. Healing can come from finding new connections. Healing can come from creating new customs and new systems and new forms of worship. The church is a living organism. We do not do things the way they did 2,000 years ago. We do not do things the way they did 50 years ago. And as we continue to create this new bond and this new meaning and this new situation, we also can bring about healing. Now, healing, once again, also, I want to say this and make it very clear, can be a physical healing. We need to be praying and supporting and helping the science community come up with an answer for this disease. But I can also tell you that I have seen in my own life and in the lives of those that I have met, that sometimes God truly does heal us physically, emotionally, physically, ways that we never expected. And that is something we need to keep in mind, is that miracles do occur. But sometimes the miracle takes a shape that we did not expect and does not come in the way that we wanted, but in the way that we need, or in the way that God sees helping us in the most best manner. With that in mind, we have to understand that we have to open our eyes and open our hearts and open our minds to a new world, to a new situation, to a new beginning. And when that happens, healing can occur not only within us, but within those that we touch. That healing not only becomes something that we receive, but that we give. That's what I hope each of us can do this week, is heal someone around us. Let their lives be a little bit better, a little bit brighter, a little bit stronger than it was last week because of the experience that they had with you. Let this mindset be in you, that God so loved you that he came for you. Let's pray. Gracious God, we thank you for the chance to have this time together and to grow in faith and love. And we pray that we will constantly feel your presence in our lives, and that we will remember that where two or three are gathered in your name, there you are also. Thank you. Amen. May the grace of God be with you this week, this day, and throughout all of eternity. Go with God. Go in peace. Amen.